You are listening to the Adapt Performance Podcast, where we aim to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody. I'm your host, Jordan Webster, and let's get into the episode.
Yes, guys, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Adapt Performance Podcast. So, in today's episode, I'll talk you through how I messed up and injured myself at a jiu-jitsu competition 8 weeks ago now, which is absolutely flown. I'm going to talk you through that. I'm going to talk you through my rehab process and how I integrated with our physiotherapist at Adapt to make sure that that was super smooth. I'm also going to talk to you about the nutrition strategies. I'm going to walk you through the whole process because even if you did not have the exact same injury as me, these concepts are still going to apply, and it's still going to make sure that your rehab is a lot better. Okay. And then I'm going to give you 3 of my top tips to manage your rehab at the end. Okay. So stick around for it. So look, just give a little bit of a backstory then. So jiu-jitsu wise, I had a competition 8 weeks ago. It was in Barnsley. Really looking forward to it. Training was going well. Everything was aligning. It was good. I was gradually losing a little bit of body fat to fit into the weight class, which was sub 91.5 kilo, which is generally I usually walk around at 92, I guess you would say. So I had to lose a little bit, and then I wanted to get there before, so I didn't have breakfast. So it was a thing, and it's been a long time since I've had to actually worry about what I'm eating from a body fat perspective, not being in a weight class sport. So it was good. I was really happy with it. Things were moving well. Get there on the day. It was a long day, to be fair. I was doing some work in a coffee shop because I got there at 9. I wasn't on until 2, but then Smooth Comp, which is the app that we use, it constantly changes your match time. So at one point I was on at 5:15, and then it brought it forward to 11:20, and I'm like, wow, okay, how am I going to warm up with this? But that's just part of the process. So yeah, basically what happened is I sat in the bleachers watching the thing, looked at Smooth Comp, and it said you're on in 20 minutes. So I'd go over. I'm like, okay, fuck, right. I'd usually want a little bit longer to warm up, really, just kind of get moving. Go over, start getting warm. Did a little bit, but then straight away check my Smooth Comp again, and it's like, okay, Jordan Webster, you're on. I'm like, okay, fuck, this is not good. Luckily, actually, one of the guys I've been interacting with on Instagram for a few years, Dane was there, who he's another S&C coach, but he's done some jiu-jitsu in the past. I think he's sick as well. So luckily, he kind of helped me a little bit in terms of a little bit of hand fighting just to get warm. That definitely kind of helped. But anyway, so really shit warm up, not going to lie. Go over to the mat area, get straight into it. Didn't really have time to think. We start. The other guy gets a double leg takedown pretty much in the first 10, 30 seconds, something like that. So he's in my guard. I work towards a triangle. So I'm trying to work like a high guard. Kind of a triangle / armbar, and he kind of postures out but twists a little bit. But because I was so I thought I was getting somewhere, I held on to it quite a lot, and he kind of turned into my knee, which happens, fairly often. Probably not as quick and erratic as that. And equally, if it was in training, I probably would have let go of that as well. So there's a lot of competition stuff and the nerves that goes into it that, just means it's probably more my fault, to be honest with you. Should have let it go. But basically felt the outside of my knee pop because of the external rotation that was going on at the hip. And consequently, my knee went varus. So the opposite of valgus, really, in the sense of it fully kind of bent inwards. I thought I saw something move, which was scary. So ref was like, what's going on? I said, something popped. Doctor came over. He's like, cool, nothing's dislocated. At least if the patella did dislocate, it's gone back in. I'm like, cool, right. So the match was called, so I didn't continue there, hobbled off the mat a little bit. And there we are. Okay, so that was the injury. Frustrating, really, really annoying. Straight away, I was like, oh, fuck. I've never really had a knee injury, a traumatic one like that. I've had patella tendinopathy, some quad tendon stuff and bits like that, but nothing really where it was like a pop, okay? And it was so loud. It was honestly, the thought of it makes me want to boke, right? Grim. But anyway, there we are, okay? So we are at day 0, essentially, of this rehab process. So basically, we've got a physiotherapist at Adapt, which is sick, and this is the exact scenario where having Ollie on board was just a fucking lifesaver. So Ollie was like, what happened? I said this. He said, okay, cool. What you want to do then is let's rest it up, get some ice on it. So 15 to 20 minutes, 3 to 4 times a day just to help with the inflammation. Get a compression sleeve on. Luckily, I've got some for jiu-jitsu anyway, just to stop it from blowing up. Keep it elevated, and then I also took a little bit of painkillers just to help. Okay, and it was honestly in that moment, and this is one of the reasons I love having like a team behind us, having a nutritionist, having the psychology support, having Ollie, the physio, is when you initially go through something pretty shit like that, having somebody that can just kind of calm your nerves and be like, right, this is what you want to do. It just stops your head from exploding, because if you start Googling shit, then before you know it, you've really wrecked your own head. So yeah, that's essentially what we did. He said, look, you want to try and make sure that you keep as much flexion and extension through that knee as possible. So, tense your quad, try and bring that foot in to get full flexion through it. So just keep it moving. Don't let it stiffen up, because that's going to be an issue later on down the line. So that's what I did, and I'm generally a good rehabber, to be honest with you. I've had a few injuries in my time, and, it's my job, so I kind of know the importance of it. So I was regularly just flex extend, just hammering it. The other side of this is we got a puppy the day after. She's from Cyprus. She's a rescue. So I think she was 4.5 months old when we got her, which was cool. But what basically happened is she is a puppy. She is so agile. She's erratic. She floats about the gaff. Like, she'll try and grab your socks when you've got them on your feet. So those first few days were pretty rough, because, I'm trying to whip away my foot so she doesn't like grab it and bite it, because she's got super sharp teeth at the minute. She's like, well, she did at the time. She's like a shark. So I hit my knee a few times, like trying to whip my foot away. So yeah, I think that would probably be my number one rehab tip, is maybe don't have a puppy, to be honest. So there it is. That was the first day or two then. Okay, I knew what I was doing. I knew I had a basic idea of, let's just see how bad it is, knowing that eventually I'm going to have to get this scanned. Okay, so what we said is, like, look, go to A&E. Okay, make sure nothing's broken. Make sure that if if something did pop, that there's been no no fractures that have happened as part of that process. Went there, that's cool. They said, cool, right? You have no break, but we are going to refer you to the acute knee clinic just to get you potentially an MRI set up. Okay. So in the meantime, I adjusted my training. So I was training quite a lot of the time. So I was doing like jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 times a week. I was lifting probably 3 or 4 times a week. I was doing a lot of conditioning on top of that. So I adjusted that, basically deprioritized a lot of the lower body stuff. Still did lower body twice a week in some way, shape, or form, but it was mostly rehabby bits based on the advice from Ollie around keeping flexion extension, just keep hip mobility, do what you can do to keep the muscles around that area alive, essentially, because it's gonna atrophy quick. You're gonna lose muscle mass. So you want to try and make sure that you get some activity through it, because you're gonna have to regain that muscle at some point, and that's going to slow down your rehab if you're just waiting to build muscle. So you might as well just like slow that down. So I just did training. I essentially lent heavily into, okay, well, let's get absolutely massive upper body wise, which was nice actually, because time off jiu-jitsu meant that my elbows, my shoulders felt good, so I could really kind of lean into upper body stuff. So it was really nice. Like, I smashed some PBs there, and I was buzzing actually. So it kept me sane, which I think is super important. So I just did training, knowing all those things. I smashed the other leg to bits, like I went hard on my non-injured side. So a lot of leg extensions, a lot of leg curl, etc. I did a little bit on my injured side, didn't do loads, but I did keep the movement. Again, flexion extension with a little bit of load. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into a private MRI, see how much that is. In my mind, I was expecting it to be like a few £1,000s, and it just wasn't. If you Google private MRI, there's loads of websites that do it. So I went through Vista Health, and it was 350 quid. Next day, you literally turn up to a random car park, and it's like this big ice cream van looking thing. And they've just got like a big old scanner in there. You rock up, mate, he takes your name, takes your date of birth, pops you in this radioactive tube, and there you go. Got the results in about, I think it was 5 working days. So yeah, that was essentially from 0 to 10 days, right? Nutrition wise, really important to speak about this. Again, mentioning that we've got a nutritionist. His advice is we've had this conversation a few times around managing injuries. So protein consumption went high. Okay, so I'm generally really consistent with training and nutrition stuff, to be fair. Particularly protein. I'm always getting 200 minimum. Okay, so I'm 90 92 kilo, let's say 90. So 180 grams per kilo body weight will put me at 2 grams per kilo. Okay, that's what I want most people to be striving towards. I upped it to 2.5 to 3, just so we could preserve as much muscle mass as possible in that injured side, and also just to support my new goals of getting absolutely wham upper body wise. So yeah, I just put protein up because look, it's super important. Muscle is like, you don't want to start losing that stuff because it takes time to rebuild and it's just a faff. So the protein side of that is I basically ordered a shit ton of protein bars, ordered a shitload of protein yogurts from Tesco, and then got some like ready-made protein shakes from the Morrisons around the corner that were on sale. The UFit ones, which are beautiful. It's like caramel, salted caramel. That's it. Just so if I did not hit it through my normal food throughout the day, my big staple meals, then I know that I can easily top it up with an extra 500, an extra 50 gram protein shake. I also took a little bit of a punt on this around collagen. So I started supplementing with some collagen. This was kind of one of those where I had a little bit of bicep tendonitis going on at the time as well. It wasn't like super bad. But collagen is generally really good for connective tissue, so tendons, less so ligaments in terms of the literature, like we don't know enough about it. But I was like, you know what, this is a perfect time to trial this. And also collagen is protein, so it just adds to protein intake for the day anyway. So I started taking collagen, basically 20 to 30 minutes pre-rehab session. So basically what I was doing, because I had bicep tendon and stuff, and I also wanted to help with my knee rehab, is I put my bicep tendon on the same day as my rehab. And I just took the collagen 20 minutes before with some orange juice. So it's best activated with some vitamin C, which essentially helps. So I tried it, and to be fair, my tendons are feeling better. I don't know. You'll never know whether it's like made an instant impact really, because it was totally new situations that I was in. My mat duration and my mat time was low. So I might be feeling fresher because of that anyway. But anyway, so collagen. Calorie wise, I put my calories up a few hundred cal. Okay, again, just supporting. Let's not lose any muscle mass during this process, because it's important, and I was fine with that. I don't mind eating a little bit extra food. I'm a foodie. So I had a few extra Five Guys and Wagamamas. Wagamamas have got these hot honey chicken bites, right? Me and the missus are obsessed with them. They are like 11 quid. Wagamama's knows what it's doing in terms of like marketing itself as a premium restaurant. But they are gorgeous, right? They are so nice. So if you're a Wagamama's enthusiast and you haven't tried them, then you need to sort it. Cool, right. So there is the first 0 to 10 days, okay? Integrating with physio, integrating with the nutrition stuff. The medium term, 10 to 14 days, got my MRI results. Sent them to Ollie so we could have a little bit of a check over. And basically what the MRI said is all your ligaments are fine. Everything's intact. The meniscus is intact, because that was what I was fearing. I thought I was going to have a surgery. Like I was proper about the whole thing. And it's right. I think you hear a loud pop like that just ricochets through your entire body, then you are going to feel a little bit worried. What the damage was, LCL, so on the outside of the knee, was showing some swelling that indicates some trauma, okay, but there was no tear, okay. So cool, little bit miffed, I guess. There is a build-up of swelling indicating trauma to where the lateral quad and the lateral hamstring insert on the outside of the knee, and then also there was a little bit of damage to the popliteal fossa, okay. So essentially just everything on the outside of the knee was a little bit annoyed, had taken a little bit of a stretch, a little bit of just did not like the position that I put it in. So that was it. Cool. We know what we're dealing with now. So I basically sent those MRI results, because they were private, to the acute knee clinic, the guy that was going to refer me off to an MRI. Because I didn't want to wait 16 weeks, because that was what they said. It's like 16 weeks for an MRI plus the waiting time. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to wait that, to be honest with you. And if I would have had to have got a surgery, genuinely, I think I would have got a loan for $9,000 or whatever it costs for a private. So just because I value it, look, these are the best years you're ever going to have, and I don't want to wait around for that long. And I really value the body, so I didn't want to fuck that up. So basically, we got the rehab results, right? Not the rehab results, the MRI results. Ollie checked them over. He's like, cool. What I want to do is, this is essentially the rehab, right? Is if we just think about what the nature of that injury is, it's lateral. We want to make sure that the muscles are integrating well together. So the co-contraction ability of the quad, the hamstring, the calf, everything around that area. Ultimately, if you've taken a bit of a knock, a bit of a pull, a little bit of something, the brain then has a little bit of a brain injury because it cannot use a part of the body that it wants to. So it's going to start to form up a little bit of patterns, a little bit of like, okay, we don't want to use that area too well. So you need to make sure that you're using like co-contraction and neuromuscular based rehab, for lack of a better way, of just making sure that that does not become an issue in the future. So we did a lot of co-contraction based stuff, a lot of like narrow stance split squats, really loading up that front leg as much as possible, super slow, building a lot of tension.
Yes, guys, what is going on? Quick break in today's episode for me to remind you about ADAPT's online strength and conditioning coaching. Our mission really is to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody. And our service does exactly that. So you get access to everything: an elite level coach, physiotherapist, psychologist, nutritionist, a community to keep you engaged. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is give you everything you would ever need in order for you to achieve your goals. So if that is something that you are curious about, get in contact and we'll just have a no pressure chat where I explain everything, find out a little bit more about you, and we can decide whether you are a good fit for our program. Okay, without further ado, let's get back into the episode. Cheers.
We use Ollie really likes him and I like him as well. It's a narrow stance split squat, but the intention is on that front leg, which is my injured side, you're going to focus on nice foot pressure. And what we're aiming for is heels on the way down. So heel pressure on the way down of the narrow stance split squat. And then when you get to the bottom position, you're then going to shift your body weight forwards a little bit and think about mid-foot and really push. But what we don't want to see is your knee just pop back. We almost want you to imagine, and Ollie used this cue the other day at one of our physio days, which was fucking brilliant. As you're coming up, I want you to imagine you're almost taking a step forward. So you're really loading up the midfoot and forefoot, which gets the calves going, it gets the glutes going. So we don't want that knee to pop back, okay? We want that knee to stay forward and your hips to come through, which means everything is working together. And like, they are so difficult. Like, if you do these well, you do them with good control and good tension, you're going to be shaking like a shitting dog. So they were a big part of my rehab. And we also turned my foot in a little bit and turned my knee in a little bit, just to shift a little bit of the bias to the vastus lateralis, so the lateral quad muscle, just to get a little bit more activation through there. We also did a lot of hamstring iso-based work. So we did some, if you imagine you lay down on the ground, you're going to bend your knees ever so slightly and dig your heels into the floor, lifting your bum slightly off the ground. Okay, we call this a reverse hamstring plank. And the idea is that you are getting a lot of isometric contraction through the hamstring and through the calf as well. So we did those, again, kind of adjusting foot positions to bias the lateral hamstring slightly. So I played around with that, and some foam roller hamstring bridges, which is essentially a very similar thing. So similar setup, but instead of your heels being dug into the floor, you're going to put the balls of your feet up on a foam roller, and then keeping your heels away from the ground, you're going to hold that position. So these are brutal, okay? I'm a big fan of them, but essentially the same thing is they get the hamstring working at the same time as the calf. Think about where the traumatic area was, it's the knee. So we want to make sure that things are operating well together. So that was the rehab that we were working on. Okay, I smashed that every other day because it made me a little bit sore the next day. So I wanted to give it some time. And then alongside that, I was doing leg machines. Okay, so I was doing adductors, I was doing abductors, I would do a little bit of hamstring curl stuff, I would do a little bit of leg extension based stuff, and I would gradually start working through some full range of motion with general strength training, goblet squats, heel elevated, just to work through it, because you got to do it at some point. So I'd rather do it sooner rather than later. And I just acted accordingly. I didn't go crazy with it. So that was it. I hammered it, basically. I then went to the consultant and he said, okay, so the MRI, you're not going to need surgery, but the way the MRI works is it doesn't actually cover the part of the meniscus, which is in the what did he say? The back corner, the back lateral corner. So even if it did slip, we wouldn't surgery that anyway. So it could be damaged. He doesn't know, but he just said, you just got to crack on. We're going to rehab it regardless. So he's like, cool, are you good? I'm like, I'm good. I was like, cheers, Steve. And I went on my merry way. I'm just buzzing that I'm not having to have surgery. So from this point, we're about 2 weeks in now. So we're moving pretty quick. Between 2 to 4 weeks, essentially hammered the rehab, started loading it up. I then went single leg on a lot of the hamstring variations. Okay, so I was getting stronger. I was really loading that up good, aiming for like 45 seconds on both of those variations. Started using weights for the narrow stance split squats and was just generally getting stronger on things like leg extension. So I was doing single leg extension. Got it to a point around, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks in, where my bad leg was one pin away or one plate away from my good leg in terms of strength. So it's close, right? Don't get me wrong, it felt difficult and it probably wasn't the same reps in reserve. And it definitely felt like at times, like my quad was shaking so hard, like the brain was just stressing, which is beautiful. Love it. You know, if there's any videos out there, you'll know how much you buzz off of seeing like twitches. You see like a shake and you're like, ooh, that's a bit of the nervous system getting involved. And yeah, they buzz off it. They're very much the same as like boxers will love the snap of a bag work or something like that. Yeah, or S&C coaches love the pop off the ground of a really nice sounding plyo, right? So I got decently strong, but was probably like missing a tad bit of extension. So I needed to keep working through that. My hamstring strength was lagging though. That one was a little bit behind and still is, to be honest with you. I then started integrating some like jumping and plyos and general rotation work, focusing on what I could do around that, because I knew at some point I'm going to have to experience some rotation as part of jiu-jitsu. So I was working on that nice and steady, once or twice a week with the jumping stuff as part of my warm-up. We then got to 4 weeks, and to be honest with you, I probably was going to go back to jiu-jitsu and do a little bit at the 3-week mark, but I got a cold and I didn't want to go and infect people, so I didn't. I basically stalled it a little bit, which was actually a really good decision in the grand scheme of things. I'm happy I gave myself that extra week. So getting back into the sport, I did jiu-jitsu twice a week, just did the technique work, and for the first 2 sessions, did not do any positional work, no positional sparring or nothing live. In the week after, I did do some positional stuff, and I did one light sparring round that was a little bit more dynamic. It was something like 60%. We were just flowing, which was nice. So I picked somebody that I could trust to do that with, that wasn't going to, try and leather me, which was good. I then essentially adjusted my training to a little bit more, I guess it's full body in nature. However, it is a little bit more kind of, I guess, a push focused day, a pull focused day, and then a lower body focused day. But I'm pretty much doing everything on each day, right? But I definitely have a priority there. And I was doing conditioning, or I am doing conditioning twice per week. And at the minute, that is 2 zone 2 style sessions, so 30 to 45 minutes of just steady bike work, and it's super easy. I literally just edit videos when I'm doing it, so it's really low time commitment in a sense, although like I'm going to be editing the videos anyway, so I might as well do some super easy cardio. And luckily I've got the watt bike in the garage. So there we are. That was week 4 and week 5. I built it up to 3 times per week at the week 5 mark, so 3 jiu-jitsu sessions per week. And now I am a week into doing full sparring rounds. Okay, I'm not worried about the knee now. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely some positions that I don't enjoy being in, that I will just give up because it doesn't feel great yet. And if you think about the healing time of ligaments, it's sometimes quite a while. If it is even the lateral, the LCL that's annoyed, or whether it is actually just the attachment point of, maybe it's more tendony, maybe it's actually at the bone, I'm not sure, but the lateral aspect of the quad and lateral aspect of the hamstring. Either way, there we are. But yeah, some positions I don't love being in, but I'm continuing with my rehab. I'm not shirking off of it. Yeah. So look, we are at 8 weeks now, right? So 8 weeks, post having a mental breakdown, thinking that I was gonna have to have another big surgery. Like, if you guys have ever had a surgery, so I broke my hip probably like 7 or 8 years. I'm going to say 6 years, 6 to 7 years now. Broke my hip, fractured the neck of my femur. You've probably heard me speak about it a few times on this podcast, but that was a killer. Like that wrecked me a little bit mentally. It wasn't nice to be nice to be that person. You couldn't do the stuff that I loved. Like I love training, I love sport, I love being an active person. It's very much a part of my personality and what I do. So not being able to do that was sad. And the rehab just took fucking forever. So the fact that I've managed to avoid that and not have to go through that again is quite nice. And fingers crossed that don't fuck this up at this point and have to eventually get a surgery. But so yeah, 8 weeks. This is where I'm at the minute. I'm going to enter, I think I'm going to do one more session tomorrow and see how it goes. See if I just feel, at the minute I'm regaining skill, essentially. Like I felt pretty rusty for the first few weeks and felt pretty on edge around jiu-jitsu. So I will build it back in. But yeah, if tomorrow goes well, I'm going to enter a competition in Sheffield in 2 weeks. I'm a little bit fluffier than usual. I'm probably like 90, like I said, 92, 93 kilo. I'm not going to bother trying to lose any body fat to get into the smaller weight class, which is sub 90. I'm not that bothered. I'll try hang with the slightly heavier boys and see how we get on. Ultimately, like I'm so new to this sport and competing in it that it doesn't really matter. We'll figure it out. I just want to go out there, have fun, and try and test myself and try and work some of the new stuff that I've been working in the gym as well, and just see how I get on. So yeah, and I think a part of that I've kind of spoke about fight camp based things is one of the things that means that people are not super active when it comes to competing, I feel, is they put too much pressure on themselves when it comes to weight categories. And they're like, yeah, I want to be super competitive, so I'm going to cut down from 100 kilo to 88. And I'm like, cool, you're going to hate your life. Okay. You're going to hate that. And you're then going to have a massive rebound where you smash dominoes and this and that. And you might even fall off the rails with training because it was such a big build up. And then you're not going to compete again for another 4 months. Okay. That's just in my opinion, it's just a bad idea. So I want to try and just compete at what I am. And maybe I get smashed at this comp and I decide otherwise. But I see it all the time with amateur fighters that are trying to do too intense fight camps and just ruin their ability to actually develop. So all that's been said, yeah, comp in 2 weeks. And my promise to myself is I'm not going to take my eye off the ball with rehab, because people do that all the time. They just assume because they're no longer in pain and they are back to being able to do a bit of their sport that I'm cured. And it's like, nope. Okay. You're probably one strong gust of wind away from re-injuring it, but probably a little bit worse now because you've built up a little bit of bad habits in terms of neuromuscular system because it's not properly integrating with the injured area. And, I think that's a huge issue. So there I am. There's a little bit of an update. That's how I messed up. That's how I used the team that we have around us at Adapt to guide me through a rough process. And that's, when I speak about Adapt, right, I am super proud. We probably don't tell people we're proud of what we've created enough, but genuinely, really, I'm happy. Like when I speak about our mission to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody, this is what I mean. Like me going out of my way to get these people involved. It's not easy to integrate and it's not easy to have communication between different parties. It's hard, right? But this is what happens if you're an Olympic athlete. This is what happens when you're a professional athlete as part of a club. So I want to try and bring that to people because it makes such a difference. It makes a difference between your rehab being okay at best to being like actually successful. So yeah, try hard at it, and I think the results of the guys that we have managed to integrate physio, nutrition, and S&C together speak for themselves, right? Not all the athletes that we work with decide to use, those parts of the service. Some people have their own physio that like to go and see their own chiro or whatever. But then that's cool because I will always try and integrate with them as the S&C guy. And Joe, the other S&C coach, will also make sure he integrates with those people, which is not always easy when they are not a part of under the same umbrella. Like I can't tell you the amount of times, like one of our guys has got injured. This is before we had Ollie, the physio, where somebody would get injured. Okay. They'd go to a physio in their local area. I dropped them an email saying, I noticed Greg was injured. Could I get a little bit of a rundown of his injury and that type of thing? And you just get aired. And I'm like, that is the worst patient care in the world because now I have no information to go on. So I've wasted my time. And ultimately, I'm back to just what I was going to do anyway, is trying to figure it out, which is okay. but I just think there's such a better way. So cool. All that to say, right, here's my top 3 tips for actually managing your rehab. Okay. Number 1 is do not do it yourself. It does not, the smartest physios I know in the world, the smartest S&C coaches I know in the world, do not do it themselves. They have all the information, all the knowledge that you could ever want on this particular topic, but it does not matter because you are still a human being that has psychology and biases towards your own situation, meaning you're probably not going to follow the plan as instructed. You're going to get in your head too much and you're probably just not thinking about things logically. You are far too close to the situation, so you're going to be emotional. So literally do not do it yourself. Do it with a physio that integrates with your strength and conditioning coach, right? Okay, look, let me plug Adapt here. Come to Adapt. Like, we have that. If you do not want to come to Adapt, that's absolutely fine. But what I will say is if you really care about your rehab and you go to a physiotherapist, is make sure that they are in communication. Start a group chat with your physio and your S&C coach. That's what we do with our guys. Okay, start that group chat so that everybody knows what the other person is saying. Don't just rely on them emailing in the background. It just doesn't work. So that's my first tip. Don't do it yourself. You need to lead it though. You are the athlete. You need to take control of your own situation. Don't be a passenger in your own career, in your own rehab. Actually guide the thing. There's tip number 1. Number 2, there's always something you can do, right? There is always something you can do. Conditioning. Okay, you can definitely still do it. If you've injured your left leg, you can still do some assault bike where you have both arms and your right leg, and you just have your bad leg up on the stunt peg. You could do some ski erg based things. You could do some no leg rower. If it's upper body that's damaged, you can still bike. You could probably still maybe run. You'll have to see what the injury actually is. You can still do conditioning. You can make sure that you are not just getting unfit. You can still do upper body or lower body, depending on where the injury is, and you can still train the other leg or the non-injured side. And that is going to be a really effective way of making sure that the rehab process is a lot quicker. Okay, so make sure you do that. So that is definitely something I would do. Is we call it the contralateral effect. You may have heard me talk about this on the podcast before. But the body and the brain sometimes cannot differentiate where it puts adaptation, okay? And by training the other side, it means that it's going to keep muscle mass around on the injured side longer, which sounds like witchcraft, and I get it, but it's true, right? But also, because you're keeping muscle mass around on that side and you're keeping strength around on the injured side, you're just in a better situation all around. And the common pushback is, I don't want to develop asymmetries. I'm like, well, number 1, humans are not symmetrical in any way, shape, or form. Like, we don't need to be. Like, look at where your heart is. Okay, it's off to one side. You're then going to have implications to rib cage, the rib cage to the hip. So we're not symmetrical. We're not even meant to be. If you're that bothered about being symmetrical, then you need to make sure that you're doing an equal amount of reps of flipping a pancake with your right hand and left hand. Opening a door with your left and right is not realistic. And unfortunately, you've got an injury, so you are asymmetrical now anyway. So let's actually lean into it and make sure your rehab's better. All that to say, top tip number 2 is there's always something you can do. Okay, don't wallow in self-pity. Get off your ass. Get shit done. And number 3, you are not cured when you're out of pain. Okay, that is not the end of your rehab as soon as you start to experience no pain, because there is probably a fuck ton of stuff you still cannot do and your brain is not operating at full speed with when it comes to actually using your body how it wants to do. Okay, so you're not cured as soon as you're out of pain. You need to keep pushing through. This is where a proper return back to play, but return back to performance is going to be super important. And I don't think I'm fully there yet. I think there's still a few things that I don't love. Okay. But I'm working through that. But I'm confident that I will continue. So you're not out of the cave, you're not out of the rehab cave as soon as you are pain free. Keep pushing. Okay. There's my top 3, right? So what was that? Don't do it yourself. Do it with a physio that integrates with your S&C coach / join Adapt. 2 is there is always something you can do, conditioning, uppers, lowers, whatever. You just got to keep going. Like, it just is what it is. And then number 3 is you are not cured when you're out of pain. You need to keep going with that process. Right then, cool. There it is. That's how I messed up. There's my injury update. There's how we used Adapt systems to make sure that I got back to a good place quick. And then there is a few tips for managing your rehab. Beautiful. Right, guys, if you've got any questions for me, fire those over on Instagram. Sometimes I'll make a podcast out of it. Sometimes I'll just, send you a few voice notes or a little bit of a texty text just to help out. But as always, if you enjoyed the episode, let me know. Okay, share it with a pal, share it with a friend. Beautiful. Hope you have a great rest of the week, guys, and I will speak to you soon.
Okay, that is the end of today's episode, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, please do let us know and then share it with somebody who may find this episode interesting. Okay, see you next time. Cheers.